You ask anybody in this town about the Toledo Zoo, the refrain is, I love my zoo, we love our zoo. We hope a person comes here to the zoo and has just an amazing time. You know, it's a great place to bring your family, but at the same time, we hope you're a little bit surprised by not just the zoo, but by Toledo too. You know, we have a great community, we have an incredible zoo, and I think the average visitor that comes here not knowing the zoo walks away very, very pleased. This mission of this zoo is to inspire people in joining us to care for animals and conserving the natural world. And so in a lot of ways, that means we're a communications organization. We are really looking at communicating why the natural world and animals are important, getting people to care about them. Just that caring becomes important down the road, because then people will support initiatives by both the government, by the state, by locals that are really out there supporting habitat conservation and animal care.
The Zoo Life is made possible through the generous support of Dorothy Mackenzie Price, a lifelong animal lover and passionate supporter of education, conservation, and preservation of the natural world. Also through the support of the Toledo Zoo and Aquarium. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
From the African savanna to the Arctic encounter, from the aquarium to the aviary, from the primate forest to the reptile house, it all started in the year 1900 with a single woodchuck. From its earliest days, a dedicated group of citizens in Toledo, Ohio, began the process of transforming a random collection of animals into one of the most highly respected zoos in the world. The past is preserved in the WPA-era architecture, and history has been made here with such things as its Hippoquarium, where the first video of a live hippo birth was captured. And in 2014, it was named the #1 zoo in America. In an average year, 875,000 people visit the Toledo Zoo and encounter over 9,000 animals from all around the globe. While for most, the zoo is a place to go and enjoy time with family and friends, it's so much more than that. Look beyond the exhibits, and you will find a dedicated group of staff members, volunteers, and youth working every day to provide quality care for the animals, educate and support their community, and lead conservation efforts here and around the world. At the zoo, it's more than just a day at the office. It's the zoo life.
I'm running a zoo, but at the same time, it's a lot like a small city. I don't think a lot of people understand what all goes into running a campus of this size. I mean, you have everything from veterinary hospital to giant warehouse complexes, maintenance, catering, a chef, a bakery. It's just absolutely amazing. We've got over 1,000 employees who work here each year. So it's just one of the largest organizations in town. This zoo has some of the strongest community support that I've ever seen a zoo have. It's really quite amazing. People love their zoo. In fact, you tell somebody you work at the zoo and the first thing they usually say is, I love my zoo. We have a zoo here in Toledo that's much, much larger than what you would expect for a community of this size. A typical zoo in the United States is found in a metro area of about 2 million people. In our metro area, if you use the largest definition you possibly can for it, the CSA, you've got basically 600,000 people here. So you end up with a world-class facility in an area that's not quite as big as one would expect. And you see that with a lot of culturals here in Toledo. We have a fantastic art museum. We have an amazing minor league ball team and hockey team. And you see it over and over and over again. You really have a history here of the community supporting its culturals and the culturals really respecting and loving their community back. The zoo's economic impact is pretty formidable here in Northwest Ohio. Our 2014 numbers were approximately $90 million in economic impact, both through direct and indirect spending. The Toledo Zoo offers a lot to a lot of different people, varying demographics. Obviously, children and mothers love to come to the Toledo Zoo for a day out, but we also have a historic amphitheater where concerts have been going on for decades, and I think for a lot of people, that's their interface with the Toledo Zoo. We have a lights show that shows up in Christmas every year, Lights Before Christmas. It's been going on, it'll be 31 years this year. We know there's a whole segment of the population where that's their interaction with the Toledo Zoo. So we're always doing something to make ourselves relevant to the community, no matter what your age, no matter what your background, no matter what your interest. And at the same time, trying to hope to really hook you into our mission of inspiring people about the wildlife and natural world. I think zoo exhibits made their biggest change back from the 70s to the 80s, where they were really looking at showcasing the animals in more naturalistic environments for two reasons. One, to give a better aesthetic appearance to the public. Two, to allow for a more enriching environment for the animals themselves. I think today, though, you see a change to a more active environment for the animals. And instead of looking at it from the standpoint of the physical, they're looking at it from the standpoint of the mental, the psychological dimension for the animals, and really providing them with ways to express natural behaviors, to express them in the normal frequencies you would see in the wild, and allow them to live as full a life as we possibly can in a captive setting. You also see exhibitry really pushing the concepts of education, pushing the concepts of advocacy and what you can do for the environment. And so now coming to the zoo and getting any sort of advocacy or education about what you can do to improve the environment becomes a very big deal. And that's something you wouldn't necessarily have seen 20, 30 years ago.
Since the year 2000, the polar bear exhibit has been an example of one of those next generation spaces for zoo animals and is still a model for other zoos today. In addition to what the public sees, the off-exhibit area for these bears helps make the Toledo Zoo the #1 breeder of polar bears in North America.
All good to open?
Sounds good. Toledo was wonderful when they designed this facility because our off-exhibit holding for the bears is very good for their quality of life. It didn't all go to what's on the public view. And so this is our pool stall. So in this area, it's sort of set up for the bears to come out here. So we give them fish as enrichment, some food frozen in ice. And then in their pool, which is 9 feet deep, we have balls for them to play with. So they have a nice, cool area to stay in when they want to, or they could swim, or they can play and interact in there. And when we have the cubs, what we do is we put a wooden insert in that's 3 feet deep. Because the cubs are pretty good about swimming right away, but the issue is they have to learn about stairs and how to get out of the water. So this gives us the ability to increasingly increase the amount of water when they learn that. From our pool stall, we have our entrance into our denning area. And what this is we have an area that is adjacent to our maternal den, where the females, when they go in to den up to have cubs, they have the small isolated maternal den, and then they have access to a larger area that has food in it and also has water, so they have access to both during the denning period. And then when they let us close the door to this area, then we know they're ready to den up. And so people always ask us, how do you den your bears up? And we say, well, they den themselves up, and that really is true. Out here is our outside dig yard. It's another off-exhibit area for the bears to have when they're not on exhibit, and it's really nice in that the ground is soil and sand and plants growing, so it's a nice soft substrate that they can bury in and walk in. This facility is really good in that bears, when they're off exhibit, have just as high a quality of life as those that when they go on exhibit. I think our program has been very successful for 3 major reasons. One is because we have 3 young, healthy bears. The females, they're not nervous. The male, he's really good with them. They're not agitated in his presence, so life is calm with them. And then we have a great staff that works closely with them, and there's a lot of trust, so when they're denned up, they're also not agitated about what's going on around them. And then the other thing is our facility. The zoo invested a good amount of money to build what these bears need, and I think it shows, and you see how good the bears look. Their coats are good, they don't have abnormal behaviors, they raise their cubs, and you know, we're just really fortunate, and the city of Toledo is really fortunate because right now there aren't too many bears that actually are having cubs, and we have them pretty regularly here. But then they go on to other zoos where they can have, you know, the same opportunity to inspire people across the country. We hope that when people leave here, they're engaged to try and help polar bears in the wild, and we'll take a look at what their own actions are in Toledo to help polar bears up in the Arctic.
The successful polar bear breeding program is only one of the many critical efforts that the zoo participates in when it comes to saving species and participating in conservation work all around the world.
The Toledo Zoo's conservation efforts surround educating the public about the issues that are facing a lot of the wildlife that you view here in the park. So that can be everything from maintaining these populations long-term in a captive situation to actually doing research on how humans are impacting these animals and how they are changing over time related to the human-caused issues.
Conservation isn't really an animal problem, it's not a plant problem, it's not an ecosystem problem, it's a people problem. You have to get people to understand that there's a problem and then to be able to change their behaviors to address it.
So conservation to me is really just saving the natural world. And that kind of goes along with our motto here at the zoo. It could be saving animals, but like the Prairie Initiative that we're standing in today, it could just be saving habitat.
When we create these native habitats here in the city of Toledo, it creates refugia for native animals to come in. So basically reconnecting the city of Toledo and the people of Toledo with their past.
Zoos in themselves are really well suited because we work with people. People come and visit us. We have interactions with people. And this makes us a very special organization and a perfect entity to do really great conservation work.
We've been on the cutting edge of reintroductions of many different species, be they snakes, butterflies, frogs, what have you. In recent history, we've had more polar bears born here than any other zoo in the country. I think we're up to about 7 in the past 8 or 9 years that were born here at the Toledo Zoo. And it just goes to show the zoo is a great environment and the animals are really responding to that.
So we're partnering with private, we're partnering with schools, partnering with other zoos, we partner with the government. So, conservation, it's a really big word with lots of different meanings and lots of different ways to participate.
The Herpetology Department at the Toledo Zoo is one of several departments involved in species survival plans and international conservation efforts.
Let me show you the little babies. Nothing like being a proud dad. This is a week-old Aruba Island rattlesnake. This is new gene diversity. What makes an animal endangered? Well, there are many, many problems or things that happen that cause animals to become endangered. Endangered just means that they are in danger of extinction. The species might disappear. I would say that the Aruba Island rattlesnake is probably the rarest rattlesnake in the entire world. On Aruba, this little tiny place, the high-end predator, the apex predator is the rattlesnake. And if the rattlesnake population is healthy, it shows that everything, all the bird life, all the plant life, all the lizard life, all the little nondescript invertebrates that you think people don't pay attention to are intact and are functioning enough to support a high-end or an apex predator. Our goal started in 1986 to be able to create a population of Aruba Island rattlesnakes that were diverse enough that in the future, if a reintroduction effort was necessary, there was a resource that could be utilized to reintroduce those snakes. We did basic biology on the rattlesnake. We did radiotelemetry studies where we followed them around and learned about them. And then other questions came. So we did a whole bunch of research on translocation. And what we discovered was if you want to prevent issues with the rattlesnakes, you don't pick them up from one place and move them long distances. What you do is you pick them up and you move them a few hundred meters, 300 yards, 300 meters, and you put them there. They seem to understand that is their home ground. They don't go back to the exact same spot they were at. They're very secretive. No one will probably ever see that snake again. But if you move it a long distance, the snake becomes disoriented, and its first instincts are to travel long distances in a straight line, looking for something it can recognize. And by traveling long distances, it increases the likelihood that it's going to have contact with people. One of the things we've done that nobody else has done, and the Toledo Zoo really spearheaded with the government of Aruba and NGOs on Aruba, was the first national conference for the preservation of Aruba wildlife. And the idea was to bring in all the stakeholders for Aruba's wildlife and nature together in one room. And this not only included the government and NGOs, it included the commercial units, the hotels, waste disposal, all these different entities to get into one room and to talk through what the conservation priorities are for the island of Aruba. We came up with a plan. We identified the most important issues that needed to be addressed. They included the creation of a single government entity that would be multiple departments, that would be the Environmental Management Authority on Aruba. Because of the work of the Toledo Zoo and the other zoos and a lot of other entities and a lot of really great people that cared, we actually changed things enough on Aruba that now they have an oversight agency that is responsible for all the wildlife and nature on Aruba. All made possible by the work that we've done and the support, of the people of Toledo.
The Cahansi spray toad is a remarkable animal that was discovered in 1996 in a roughly 5-acre microhabitat in the spray zone at the base of the Cahansi Falls in the African country of Tanzania, the only place in the world this animal has been found. However, in 1999, after the construction of a hydroelectric dam needed to produce power for the Tanzanian people, a dramatic loss of habitat occurred. It is believed that the loss of habitat played a critical role in the decimation of the Cahansi spray toad population. Scientists, organizations, and the Tanzanian government set out to recreate the spray zone conditions at the bottom of the falls. Assurance populations were also established utilizing the expertise of the Bronx Zoo, the Toledo Zoo, and others. In 2003, after a brief resurgence, the Cahansi spray toad disappeared in the wild. In a shocking turn of events, the assurance populations in the zoos also crashed, placing these amazing animals on the verge of extinction. It was the Toledo Zoo that discovered the methodology to successfully breed the Cahansi spray toad in captivity, ultimately re-releasing them into the wild.
Here we are in Toledo. The fact that we have such a great zoo and the support of the local citizens allowed us to build a facility in the museum, amazing amphibians that have biosecure facilities that allow us to reproduce spray toads. So you can see, what is necessary for us to go ahead and reproduce, maintain, and manage Cahansi spray toads here at the zoo. We had to simulate everything. We had to simulate the spray zone from the waterfalls. We had to simulate the cool temperatures, that constant temperatures that are found in Cahansi. We had to make sure that they have an adequate diet. We feed out 60,000 crickets, newly hatched crickets a day, going back and forth between the 2 rooms that we have spray toads in to feed the 3,000 plus spray toads that we have. So the amount of work that's necessary to maintain a population of spray toads is very significant, and it is certainly a lot of work. Well, this is a really, really exciting moment for the Toledo Zoo. We are in the process of packing 1,100 Cahansi spray toads, and the next destination for them is going to be Dar es Salaam and then the Cahansi Gorge. What you're seeing here is a 1.5 years of work that we've been raising up these spray toads, getting the numbers up so we had enough to send back. So this is a really exciting moment for the zoo. Right now what we're doing is we're going to be packing, or we are packing the spray toads up into individual little deli cups. So we have approximately 14 or so spray toads per cup. Once these animals are in the cups, the plan is that we're going to put them in the crate into one of the biosecure rooms, and leave the crate open overnight, get the crate nice and cool. You know, all the studies done about amphibian reintroductions have one common factor for their success, and that's numbers. In order to be successful, you got to release at least 10,000 animals. So we're on our way to meeting that goal. And our goal is to see the Cahansi spray toad restored to the gorge, and then the captive populations be minimized, okay? So they're here as an assurance population, but the amount of effort that goes into them would be greatly reduced. Since that time, there's been an enormous amount of work done to restore the gorge, and the gorge seems to be very healthy, and the spray toads that we have been released there in the past, they're still spray toads persisting. So no longer is a spray toad extinct in the wild.
Just south of Australia, on the island of Tasmania, the Tasmanian devil is fighting a battle for survival against a devastating disease.
In 2015, the Toledo Zoo applied to be part of the Save the Tasmanian Devil program, and it's a competitive process where very few zoos are chosen to participate in this program. And what it is over in Australia you have the Tasmanian devils, and they used to be found throughout the main island of Australia and then also down in Tasmania, which is a part of Australia, but dingoes actually exterminated them up on the main part of Australia, so they're just found down in Tasmania. And the numbers were doing well until in 1996, this cancer developed in one female. And the way devils act in the wild is they can hunt small, birds and mammals and stuff, but they really are scavengers. And when the animals come to scavenge on a carcass together, they sort of fight and spit a little bit and get little injuries to the face. And then what happened is this cancer, the cells would fall into the next devil's open wounds, and that devil would actually develop the exact same tumor. So the DNA from all the tumors from 1996 in the Tasmanian devils can be traced back to this one individual. And once an animal gets it, it's fatal. So they lost 90% of the Tasmanian devils down there. So they had put together this assurance population because they had thought that all the Tasmanian devils would eventually come in contact with each other and then they would die, and so they wanted a healthy, unaffected population. So they built up a large assurance population which was genetically diverse as they could get it. So right now we're one of 5 zoos in the US that have them, and as part of our program we made a commitment for conservation to help them, and we actually have an adjunct staff member over there that actually does the surveys of the populations to see how they're changing over time in the different regions and how much disease there is and how old the animals are living to. So we have a field component, and then we have the really important education component too.
So Toledo Zoo is part of our ambassador program, as we call it. It's a program set up to supply or utilize or offer devils that are finished in the breeding population of what we call the insurance population. So these are captive devils that are now living out their lives in a captive world with the best welfare and enrichment we can give them. And in kind, we ask for some sort of support for the in situ wild devil conservation we do here. So the Toledo partnership in supporting the annual monitoring program is a key element of what we're doing. It gives us the direction that we need for the species recovery.
When it comes to supporting all of the zoo's efforts at home and around the world, it's the community and the guests that make it possible. Parking lots, admissions, concessions, merchandise, catering, concerts, guest interactions, and special experiences all contribute to the zoo's primary mission.
One of the things we do is we're trying to find a way to immerse ourselves or our guests in the animal experiences we have here without intruding on their environment. So we're constantly looking at innovative ways to try to get them, I don't want to say closer, but more connected to what we're trying to offer. by doing that, our hope is that it'll generate some interest in that animal itself and in their overall livelihood or environment outside of the zoo itself. So what we do as an organization with regard to our conservation programs is at each location that we have that people actually pay for different items, we offer different programs, such as an add-a-buck program where if you'd like to add $1 onto your purchase, you can round up at certain locations. You can actually buy certain food items, and a portion of what they purchase goes towards a specific animal or conservation program that the zoo has endorsed. I think what it does is it allows our guests to really kind of feel like they're actually contributing to the efforts that are being put in place to help these animals in their environment. It personalizes the experience for them. So this gives us an opportunity to talk about what's happening with some of these animals, and many of which are endangered or are facing extinction. And they have an opportunity to really step forward and say, hey, you know what, I feel like I can contribute, which in turn supports these organizations that are making these environments better outside of the zoo and their natural environment. I'm kind of unique because I didn't originally come from the zoo field. So I looked at this as an opportunity to feel like I could give back to the environment and the world that I live in. So I really enjoy the fact that I know that not only what I do supports the zoo, but it also helps improve the environment and the world around us.
In addition to all of the opportunities to support the Toledo Zoo, some of the most valuable contributions are in the form of the time and effort of its volunteer teams.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the penguin exhibit. My name is Dave, and that's Robin the keeper, and she's feeding them right now. You'll notice she's got a clipboard, and she keeps track on what everybody gets to eat so that she knows everybody gets their fair share.
We'll say hello to Terry. Hello, Terry.
Hi, everybody. I'm hoping you're having a great time here at the Toledo Zoo and Aquarium.
Now, what exactly are you doing inside the tank today?
I'm feeding the fish a combination of large and small krill.
So if you want to pet her, you got to take 2 fingers and you got to pet from her back this way.
Well, here at the zoo, especially during the summer, we have over 700 volunteers, both adults and teenagers. So we have a wide spread of things that you can do depending on your interest and your schedule. For just adults, we have our adult education program. So we focus on a couple of exhibit areas, kind of make it simple for the adults to get started, answering questions, helping the visitors enjoy their experience. We have opportunities in offices, so if you're not really interested in talking to people, but like being in a small office environment, that would be fine for you. If you have a green thumb, we have a great horticulture department, a lot of gardens here at the zoo. If your schedule isn't that friendly, we have special events, so we can help out with concerts.
People ask me how long I've been here, and I say since fall of 1980. Do the math. That's all I tell them.
Our Zoo Teen program is for teenagers ages 13 to 17, and it's a service and leadership development program, and we like to think that it's both things. So our teens will come in, and they can do a lot of different things. They can do education here at the zoo, so the average visitor might see them in the contact yard with our goats or at the guinea pig table. They'll help out at activity tables throughout the zoo. But beyond that, they go off grounds a lot and help the metro parks, remove invasive species. They help pack food, Northwest Iowa Food Bank. They do a lot of different things, and that's the service aspect of it. The leadership aspect is really a very unique journey for the teens themselves. Many of our teens will come in shy and quiet and nervous talking to visitors, and all of a sudden they're put in a role where they have to talk to people, often to large groups of people. So they slowly gain a great deal of confidence in who they are and what they can do and what they can accomplish. And that becomes transferable to other aspects. Success is something that kind of feeds upon itself. If you believe you're going to be successful at something and you are, that gives you confidence to be successful at something else. And so we have teens that have been in this program for years that have fed off of that confidence for a long time, and it's great to watch, and what they're able to achieve with that confidence as they get older is truly awe-inspiring.
I stuttered a lot. I really didn't show my passions at all. I was kind of like a very introverted, quiet kid.
I was even scared to talk to other zoo teens, but it's really helped me in being able to speak to other people.
For a chance to then give back to the zoo that I have been to and I've enjoyed so much, gotten so much from, it is one of the main things why I probably still am in the program.
Volunteers here at the zoo are very paternalistic and maternalistic over the zoo. It's their zoo. They believe in it. a great deal. They see what the zoo is trying to accomplish with some of the conservation programs. They see the impact that it can have on the visitors, and kids that start in our preschool are now in our teen program, and someday they'll have kids that they'll be bringing to the zoo. And volunteers know they're part of something truly special.
I helped raise 3 baby gorillas, so I did everything that I would do with a baby, change diapers and feed it.
I watched a hippo get born. I was actually out here the day it was born, which is something that very, very few people in the world get to see.
You get to inspire them to love these animals that you already love, and it's very fun to share that passion for something that you care so deeply about to these people who you will never interact with again in your life, but you got to share a moment with them.
And volunteers in general, it depends on who you talk to in terms of what their favorite things are. Certainly if you talk to our dive volunteers, they enjoy being in the aquarium and enjoy sharing those experiences. And the divers will, high-five the glass as the kids are there, or, fist bump visitors. And that's really cool for a young child to have that kind of experience with someone that's diving in that large tank. So they would certainly enjoy that. We have volunteers who really enjoy being out near the giraffes or the elephants and getting people to be inspired by those animals. A lot of elephants are still being poached, and so those are stories that need to be told. But the animals can't tell those stories on their own. They need voices to share them.
I mean, my grandchildren growing up, will their children see as nice a world to live in as we do? Maybe yes, maybe no, but it's up to us.
Those of us out here that do some interpreting for the public, we're small cogs in the big wheel, but it all works together.
It's really inspiring to see how much of a change you can make a little bit at a time, whether it's just talking to someone about it, whether it's going out into a field and removing invasive species, whatever it is, it really does make a change in the long run. And it's incredible what we do.
Volunteers tend to stay, and we've had some that have been here for over 30 years because of the people they meet. They meet kindred spirits who care about animals and care about nature and want to have an impact. And they form friendships and relationships that help them go through the test of time. Whether they're adults who continue on their adult life, or even teens that meet and then they continue friendships even after they've graduated from here and gone on to college and the rest of their life, they stay in touch. And I think those relationships are what makes volunteering so special.
Whether you are a preschooler or a lifelong learner, it's all about education at the Toledo Zoo.
We're doing a lot of education. It falls back on that whole idea that we are a communications organization. Education is very important, but that takes a lot of different forms. Some of it's not just direct one-on-one education or even classroom education. Some of it's hands-on, some of it's immersion in nature. Some of it's just allowing children, people, community members to see these animals that they would never have a chance to see any other way.
Many of the animals that we have here are in trouble throughout the world, endangered or threatened animals, and their habitats are threatened or endangered. I think it's our responsibility to tell people why these animals are threatened, and also the types of actions that they can take to help preserve these animals and these habitats worldwide.
From its state-licensed preschool program to teacher training to taking the zoo to the classroom, the zoo's educational programs endeavor to transform people's perspective of the zoo from a place of entertainment to one of scientific exploration. A great example is the zoo's award-winning Nature's Neighborhood.
We did a study in Nature's Neighborhood a few years ago, and what we found out in that study is that there is a direct link between nature play and science learning behaviors. So basically, we're building a foundation and a framework where these kids start using science process skills. For instance, just simply observing. Or here's a great one, like cause and effect. That if I build this dam in this stream out here, that it causes the water to flow in a different direction. Those are all precursors for kids to move into more advanced, cognitively advanced scientific thinking. And that's really important as they grow up, making that connection early so they can start thinking about what am I doing that's affecting animals and habitats worldwide? All of our programming that we do with schools and in conjunction with schools is matched to the state standards that are put out by the Ohio Department of Education. We also look to the next generation science standards for guidance.
Whether it's camps, overnight stays, or behind-the-scenes tours, when it comes to education, there is something for everyone.
Behind-the-scenes tours, that's a special opportunity for our guests to get to places they normally couldn't get to if they were here as a casual zoo visitor. So for instance, one of our most popular programs is a behind-the-scenes tour with the penguins. People love penguins. All right, you go over there, people are wowed by our penguin exhibit, but when you go behind the scenes, you get to interact with our keepers who take care of the penguins, can tell you everything that you want to know about penguins, but they also get an up-close and personal view and look with a penguin that they normally wouldn't get. And so that's what our behind-the-scenes tours programs provide. I want them to walk away with, that place was an awesome place, that this place was unique and different than any other zoo that they've been to. Okay, unique in the fact of how we exhibit animals, unique in the fact of what they see here in terms of exhibited animals, and unique in what we do locally beyond the borders of the zoo.
By making education a priority, the Toledo Zoo aims to inspire its visitors to care for animals and understand the importance of conservation, not just around the world, but in our own backyard.
When I was in New York City, we started a program looking at urban ecology and really looking at ways to make the work that the zoos were doing relevant to the people in New York City. And it was amazing when you went out through New York City and found little pockets where wildlife was still eking out a living. It was quite incredible. And so to bring the startings of that program here and to set up our Wild Toledo program, which is sort of primarily based with this prairie restoration, but is also doing a lot of work with the wildlife in and around Toledo. It's pretty amazing. We're producing great science. We're having an impact. We're seeing an improvement in the animals' habitat. We're seeing an improvement in the number of animals, the biodiversity of animals, and that's meaningful because to me, at the end of the day, I'm very pragmatic. I like to look at the metrics of a situation, and if I can go out and say, well, there were no butterflies on this lawn before, and now there's 10 species of butterfly using this lawn, that's big to me and very important to me, and it shows that we've actually had an impact.
So Wild Toledo is the zoo's local conservation initiatives. These are things like our Urban Prairie Initiative, our turtle research that we do, and things like the Hellbender here. And Wild Toledo is really well suited to furthering the zoo's mission because these are all things that occur in our region, in our backyard, and they're things that people have a direct relationship with. One of Wild Toledo's initiatives is related to the Hellbender and assisting division wildlife with the recovery of the Hellbender here in Ohio. It's a state endangered species and it has succumbed to historic pollution issues and current landscape changes around the river situations that they live in. So eggs are collected in the late summer, they're hatched at the Toledo Zoo, and they're reared for a period of 3 years. At that point, they get individually microchipped and released back into Ohio streams. One of the biggest things for recovery of a species like this in the state of Ohio is it requires a lot of partners. So the Toledo Zoo's role is rearing these animals for the division wildlife, but all of these lands we're on are often privately owned or owned by the watershed, so none of this could occur without all of the diverse partners that we have as part of this program.
So you'll hold it, you'll try to hold its body and restrain it. And then I'll be grabbing its tail and taking a genetic sample.
Hellbenders are endangered. They're the largest amphibian we have in Ohio. Recently, at least the last time I went out, we didn't find any. And we knew that we had what we call recruitment issues. In other words, we didn't have many small ones showing up. They had some larger, older individuals, but they didn't have very many of the smaller ones. So right now it's sort of an effort to put 3-year-old animals in here to reestablish the population.
So as we go to release these animals back into the wild, what we're looking for is nice secure shelter rocks that have a burrow that they can go into, be protected from predators and be protected from big floods or anything like that. So we snorkel along looking for these nice secure rocks. The animals are brought out to us in a net, and so we're just going to take this animal now and place him in the water and let him into his new home. So So the hellbender is one of the most ancient living amphibians. They've been around for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And if you just look at what they go through in a year in one of these creeks or rivers, from the slow trickle of the summer drought and hot water with very little oxygen to the raging ice storms in the winter, they live through that every year, and they've been doing it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's pretty incredible to think about what they can survive and what they've been able to live through. And oftentimes amphibians get portrayed as this delicate creature, the canary in the coal mine, but it's quite the opposite. They're actually extremely hardy, very, very resilient. So the fact that they're declining, that should be a real concern to us. That is what should really motivate us to worry about them. These are the ultimate water quality indicators. They live a long time, 50, 60 years. They don't move very much. So if something was to happen to a stretch of creek that kills the hellbenders, they're not coming back. The fish might come back, the little bugs might come back, but the hellbenders aren't. So they're a phenomenal water quality indicator. They're a great part of Ohio's natural history, and it's a great thing to have them return to the wild. These kind of issues, these species recovery issues, especially for something that lives at a watershed, there's no single agency, organization, or individual who can actually be successful in restoring these animals. It takes a partnership. We need people that are working out here in the field to restore the riparian forest. We need people in the zoos that are rearing animals for us. So the Ohio Hellbender Partnership has brought all these people together, and it's a real challenge, but that's the only way we're going to tackle these big problems that are facing us. Zoos' mission statements are about conservation, and it's a great thing when we can see zoos doing conservation right in their backyard, right here in Ohio, and having a real impact, and using the expertise and using the facilities that they have to make an impact right here in Ohio.
A top priority of the Wild Toledo program is its native prairie habitat restoration project. Its goal is to reconnect urban areas with their natural habitats.
Wild Toledo is really unique among zoos and conservation programs really across the country and worldwide because we're focusing just on our own backyard. So we're standing in the Broadway Prairie, which is part of Wild Toledo's Urban Prairie Initiative. And this was actually one of the first programs with Wild Toledo, and we decided to take abandoned lots and turn them into what would have historically been in Toledo prior to European settlement. So in this case, we're actually standing in a prairie, which is a mixture of flowering plants and grasses. And this particular prairie is right across the street from the traditional entrance to the zoo on Broadway. Most of our urban prairies have anywhere from 25 to 45 species of plants. And most of those plants, they're selected both for their ecosystem services, but also for their ecological services. So a lot of these plants serve as host plants for native animals, as well as native birds and native pollinators.
Currently, pollinators are in decline for a variety of reasons, one of which is loss of native plants in urban areas. Pollinators are critical when it comes to spreading seeds for new plants, and especially making it possible to grow the fruits that we eat every day.
Really what we're building here, I know to the layperson it's just going to look like a lot of flowers, but we're actually building an ecosystem from the ground up. So these plants that are standing in front of me, eventually these are going to set seed. Birds are going to eat these seed, they're going to drop some of the seed onto the ground, and small mammals are going to come in because there's a bunch of food there. And then once we start getting small mammals, as well as birds, you start getting snakes and larger snakes. And then there's also bugs that pollinated this, some of the snakes eat. And once you have the small mammals coming in, you even get larger mammals. So standing here on the Broadway Prairie, we actually set up trail cameras and have found that red fox have moved in here, right into historic South Toledo, maybe 5 miles from the downtown area. Most of the plants here, or at least some of them, have been specially selected to be butterfly host plants. Our native butterflies will only eat native plants, is the best way to put it. And each one of our prairies actually has 2 different species of milkweed at minimum. All of these flowers serve as nectar plants for the monarchs, and then the milkweed, they can lay their eggs on them and their larvae can grow and become adults and breed then also. So this prairie, or even when you plant stuff in your backyard, it may seem like you're not really making a big change. Your tiny prairie garden, it's saving maybe 1/10 of a pound of nitrogen or maybe a couple 100 pounds of silt a year. It's not a whole lot. But when your friends and family come and see it and you're excited about it, they see the monarchs breeding on your prairie, they hear about the environmental benefits, well then they're gonna wanna go do that. So you wind up getting a huge group of people that are all making that very tiny change. And when you add that up, that adds up to an absolutely amazing change in the world.
So what we're doing right now is we're trying to pick up the frequency. It'll just kind of shave some time off of our trek.
Essentially what we have here is this is a receiver and then this is an antenna, and what it's doing is it's picking up a signal that's being transmitted to us by one of our Blanding's turtles that we have out here. It's around in here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm getting signal on this.
Perfect, yeah, we're real
with
close.
No antenna.
All right, we're on top. Just in this area. And then we got to go through all this underbrush, try to dig them out because they're going to be dug in pretty deep.
Yep, there he is.
Perfect. That wasn't too bad.
No.
So all that walking and all that bushwhacking led up to this moment right here. This is our Blanding's turtle. Kind of see they've got kind of a round shell. They're kind of like the size of a football, really. And this is a male Blanding's turtle, otherwise known as MSF2. This is his transmitter right here on his shell. And this is what is emitting that frequency that we were picking up with the receiver and the antenna. And these Blanding's turtles are threatened in Ohio, so they're suffering from loss of habitat because people are destroying the wetlands and filling in the flooded forests. And so these Blanding's turtles are having less and less habitat for reproduction and basic life cycles. And these turtles are running into issues because, say, they'll go from one body of water to another, and before it was safe because it was just planted area or forested area, but now it's a road. So these turtles are forced to cross roads, which are forcing them to come into contact with vehicles, and we're seeing a lot higher road mortality because of it. Well, the zoo's always been really interested in local reptiles and amphibians, and the Blanding's turtle is a really cool local reptile, and it's an animal that has seen reduced numbers in the wild, so it's an animal that we're particularly interested in because they're a vital part of the ecosystem, and we want this animal to do well because it's a characteristic and charismatic animal that's found here in Northwest Ohio. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna GPS his location so we can kind of keep track of their spatial distribution. That's an important thing that we're doing, is we want to know how they're using this habitat. So every time we come out here, we got to put a GPS point where we find it and keep track of how that changes over the course of the season. So as we're doing these turtle surveys and working with the Blanding's turtles, we're actually observing a higher number of adult turtles in our traps and in our encounters, and we're actually finding 0 juvenile turtles, which is kind of alarming. There's little recruitment seemingly in this population, and so by studying the population we get a better idea of the dynamic and if we need to step in and do a rearing and release program with them to try to help augment their population. But we're still kind of in the research stage of that. We're still doing these sort of surveys to see how the population is doing in the wild and if we need to intervene at any time.
I mean, you guys saw how hard it is to find this turtle in this habitat. You know, we could be literally standing on young ones and we just don't know it, and so that's, you know, why this kind of research is important, so we can get a better feel for what's going on out here.
Yeah, I mean, the methodology that we employ for the adult turtles might not be appropriate for the baby turtles, and that might be why we're not finding them. So more of these kind of surveys and more data is definitely going to help us determine whether or not these turtles need help.
Located on approximately 70 acres of land, the Toledo Zoo and Aquarium is involved in over 80 species survival plans in connection with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. It is also pioneering prairie restoration projects, emphasizing education, implementing sustainability practices, and leading conservation efforts here and around the world.
What is pretty fascinating about the Toledo Zoo is we are a small facility when you look at the size of our campus, but if you look at the international outreach we have across the whole world, we do a lot of stuff.
You know, we're on this small little blue ball of a planet. It is of a finite size. The summation of its parts are actually greater than the individual areas, but it's the fact that here we are in Toledo, we're doing so much work, but we impact the entire world. We impact the world by getting people to understand their environment here in northwestern Ohio, but also we impact the world by getting people throughout the world to obtain expertise that they don't have, to understand the issues that face wildlife throughout the entire world.
Toledo Zoo is actually doing a lot of these programs themselves. So a lot of other institutions sometimes raise funds to assist with projects that are already going on. Toledo Zoo certainly does that, but we have a higher proportion of projects that we are actually running and doing ourselves. So for example, when you're in the reptile house and you see the Aruba Island rattlesnake enclosure, that's a species that we're actively doing work with in the wild. When you're here visiting the zoo and you see the Tasmanian devil, we have our adjunct researcher who is currently doing research on the tumor facial disease that's occurring in Tasmania with the Tasmanian devils.
Another project that we've supported was an Ugandan waterway project for African elephants, and our support in our Conservation Today program with that goes to establishing outposts for the rangers so they can catch the poachers and watch over the animals.
There's been a lot of education of foreign researchers, especially with amphibians and reptiles, coming here into this zoo and learning from our staff. From a global standpoint, I mean, you can't get over two of them in particular. Aruba Island rattlesnakes, where the zoo actually led the initiative to form a national park in Aruba. And with the Chianti spray toads, I mean, actually returning an animal to the wild. That's incredible. For our staff that were involved in that program, that's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see your work actually have that kind of meaningful impact.
People of the city of Toledo, they have a lot to be proud of when they come here to visit the zoo, that all of those programs, again, whether they are aware of it or not, are going on behind the scenes. Zoos must be more than just an entertainment venue. We must conserve the animals that we are exhibiting here. If we don't do that, we're nothing more than just a stamp collection, just a collection of animals. So every time that they read something about like polar bear conservation, like Randy Meyerson doing work with Polar Bears International, that work, they can be proud of that work that we do.
I recently visited the United Arab Emirates and went to the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums meeting and talked about our local conservation program. And it was unique enough that they gave me 15 minutes to come up and talk to all of the zoo directors across the world. And a lot of people are excited, and the idea is that those zoo directors are going to take that back to their conservation departments, and they're going to start doing the exact same thing that we are, and that's just going to magnify the effect that we're having.
We have a gift. We have planet Earth, and it's a very, very special place, and the only place like it that we know of in the universe. And our existence on the Earth really depends on the biodiversity of the planet and healthy ecosystems. But really, I think there's an intrinsic value to the diversity of the wildlife on Earth, and that we should protect it.
By inspiring others to join in caring for animals and conserving the natural world, the Toledo Zoo is encouraging all of us, in our own way, to make the world around us a better place. If we do that, we're living the zoo life.
The Zoo Life is made possible through the generous support of Dorothy Mackenzie Price, a lifelong animal lover and passionate supporter of education, conservation, and preservation of the natural world. Also through the support of the Toledo Zoo and Aquarium. and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you.